You ever have one of those neighbors who turns everything into a personal crusade? The type who wakes up each morning looking for a fight, convinced the world is out to inconvenience them? Yeah, meet Karen. She lives in Unit B, right across the pond from my house. Same row of duplexes, same sleepy neighborhood, but a world of difference in attitude. I swear, if a bird chirps too loudly, she's out with a clipboard ready to write it up like she's running some kind of suburban police force. Everything was quiet until I got the ducks. It started simple. My kids had been begging for a dog, but I work long hours and didn't want to leave a puppy cooped up. Then, one day at the local feed store, I saw a few ducklings in a little pen with a sign that read "Ready for a Pond Life." I thought, why not? I've got a nice pond behind my unit, some open space, and kids who could use a little outdoor responsibility. I picked up 6 of them, 3 white pecans, 2 mallards, and a little black and white guy we later named Sir Flap Salad because of the way he always waggled his wings when excited. We built them a small house, fenced off a little section of the yard so they wouldn't wander too far, and let them enjoy the pond during the day. They were noisy. Sure, ducks aren't silent, but it was the sort of pleasant, natural sound you expect near water: quacking, splashing, the occasional excited honk when one of them found something tasty in the mud. The kids were over the moon. They'd sit out there for hours, naming them, feeding them peas, and watching them swim around. Even the neighbors didn't seem to mind at first. Old Mr. Jenkins next door would wave and say, "They remind me of my childhood on the farm." Mrs. Patel from 2 units over even brought a bag of chopped lettuce for them. But not Karen. No, not Karen. It was around 7 a.m. on a Thursday when I heard the dreaded war cry, "Excuse me." I turned, still holding the feed bucket, to see Karen storming across the grass like a suburban general, robe flapping in the wind, coffee mug in hand. Her expression was somewhere between righteous fury and condescending disbelief. "Are those asterisk ducks asterisk?" she asked, like I'd brought in a pack of wild wolves. "Yep," I replied cheerfully. "They're friendly. 2 want to meet Sir Flap Salad." She ignored the joke. "They were making noise at asterisk 6 this morning asterisk." I was trying to sleep. I bit back a smile. They get excited when the sun comes up. Can't blame them. "Well, I asterisk can asterisk. This is a asterisk quiet asterisk neighborhood. People come here for asterisk peace asterisk. You can't just bring in barn animals like it's a petting zoo." I tried to stay calm. "It's not a petting zoo. It's a pond. And ducks are kind of the point of a pond." She scoffed. "This is outrageous. If you don't do something, I asterisk will asterisk. I'll call the leasing office, the city, whoever I need to." Now here's where it got interesting. Because what Karen didn't know, what almost no one on the street knew, was that I wasn't just some guy renting a unit like everyone else. I asterisk own asterisk the land, all of it. The pond, mine. The property around it, mine. Even the duplex Karen rents. You guessed it, mine too. When my grandfather passed away last year, he left me his entire real estate portfolio. I didn't make a big show of it. Kept paying the same maintenance company to manage things, didn't raise rents. Just let people keep living their lives. I moved into one of the vacant units to save money and be closer to the property. Nobody paid me much mind, which I preferred. But now, here was Karen blowing a gasket over ducks, threatening to call property management, not realizing she was about to report me to me. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said carefully. "Let's see what the leasing office says." That stopped her cold for a second. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just that I'm sure they'll look into it," I said, flashing the most neutral smile I could manage. She huffed, muttered something about bylaws, and stormed off back to her side of the pond. My kids came out a few minutes later, still in pajamas, holding lettuce leaves for the ducks. "Was that the angry lady again?" my daughter asked. "Yup," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "She's not a fan of Sir Flap Salad." "She better be nice," my son added with a frown. "He's the smartest one." I laughed. But the truth was, I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to let things go, and I was right. By lunchtime, I had a voicemail from the property manager saying they'd received a noise complaint from a tenant regarding unusual animals on the premises. There was also An email from the HOA board president asking if I was aware of any unauthorized livestock activity. And somehow don't ask me how someone had even submitted an anonymous tip to animal control, claiming I was harboring aggressive waterfowl. Aggressive waterfowl. The ducks, meanwhile, were happily bobbing in the water, quacking at dragonflies. It wasn't until I got that third call from animal control itself that I decided enough was enough. I wasn't just going to deal with Karen. I was going to remind her who she was dealing with. But I had to time it just right. Let her dig the hole a little deeper. Let her think she was building a case. Because when you deal with people like Karen, there's nothing more satisfying than watching them realize too late that they've picked a fight they already lost. And me? I was just getting started. Karen, of course, didn't waste a single second after our little morning chat by the pond. She'd made up her mind. And when Karen decides someone has violated her personal sense of order, she treats it like a federal investigation. By the next day, things began to escalate rapidly. It started with a new post in the neighborhood Facebook group, title, Unsanctioned Livestock, and a blurry picture of one of my ducks mid-quack, wings outstretched like it was about to attack. The caption read something like, "Is anyone else being disturbed at all hours of the day by very loud ducks behind Unit A? I don't think farm animals belong in residential areas." Thoughts. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. A few agreed, or at least sympathized. One person commented, "I've heard them quack before dawn too. It's kind of loud." Another added, "Wait, there are ducks, that's kind of cute." But most people were either confused or amused. One neighbor replied, "It's literally a pond, Karen. Ducks are supposed to be there." Another wrote, "This is the same woman who complained about my wind chimes. Karen, please chill." I didn't comment. I didn't like anything. I just watched. By the weekend, the situation had taken a turn for the bizarre. Flyers started appearing on mailboxes and doors. Around the cul-de-sac, yellow printer paper, big bold letters, ***, protect our peace and quiet. Say nitrogen monoxide to noisy ducks. *** at the bottom. It had a small note that read, "Let the leasing office know if you've been disturbed." I found one taped to my own front door, as if I were the one who needed informing. I was somewhere between laughing and annoyed. The ducks weren't even loud. They mostly quacked during feeding or when someone walked by the pond. It wasn't like they had a sound system and a DJ out. They were birds. But none of that mattered to Karen, who had taken this on as her personal mission. Then came the email from the HOA. A brief, oddly formal message. "Dear resident, we have received a complaint regarding the keeping of domestic fowl on the premises. Please be advised that community bylaws may prohibit certain types of animals. We are currently reviewing the matter." They didn't even check who owned the land. They just got a complaint and forwarded it. Standard protocol, I suppose. Still, I could feel the irritation building in my chest. I knew I could shut this down in an instant with one phone call or a short email. I could tell the HOA that I wasn't a renter, I was the owner, not just of the unit, but of the pond and of several other buildings on the same street. But I didn't, why? Because I wanted to see how far Karen would go. I needed to know just how entitled she truly was. And if I'm being honest, part of me wanted to let her build this whole bonfire of righteous outrage, just so I could douse it in cold truth when the time was right. It got even better. 2 days later, I was at home on a Zoom call for work when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man in khaki pants and a city animal control badge clipped to his shirt pocket. He was holding a clipboard and looking half apologetic, half bored. "Hi," he said. "We got a report about potentially aggressive ducks." I blinked. "Aggressive?" He nodded. "Yeah, someone said they were charging at people near the water, causing a disturbance. You mind if I take a look?" "Be my guest," I said, trying not to laugh. I led him around the back, where Sir Flap Sallet was waddling in lazy loops around the pond, followed closely by Quackers and Detective Bill. They were quacking, sure, but they were also calm, curious, and very much not aggressive. The officer knelt down and held out a hand. Sir Flap Sallet waddled closer, sniffed it, then turned away to peck at a weed. The man chuckled. Yeah, I didn't think this was going to be a real problem. But protocol's protocol. No worries. I said, they've all had their shots. They're properly housed, and I've got a vet record if you need it. He shook his head. You're good. These ducks are fine. Honestly, I've had scarier encounters with squirrels. I asked him casually if the complaint had come from a specific person, and he just gave a vague shrug. Can't say for sure, but your neighbor across the way seemed pretty insistent when she called. I smiled. Figures. After he left, I stood by the pond for a while, watching the ducks paddle around without a care in the world. And I made my decision. I walked inside and pulled up the lease records from the property management system I had access to. Karen's name was right. There, Karen Thompson, Unit B leaseholder for the past 3 years. Monthly rent paid on time, no issues. But here's the twist. The lease was technically under the umbrella of my company. When I first inherited the property, I'd created a shell company to manage it for legal and tax reasons. That meant every lease agreement, every single one, ran through me. Karen wasn't just complaining to her landlord. She was complaining about her landlord to her landlord. It was almost a perfect. I drafted a formal notice, not angry, not emotional, just polite and factual. Dear tenant, we have received your recent complaints regarding animal noise from the pond located behind Unit A. After investigation, it has been determined that the animals in question are privately owned and do not violate any community bylaws or city ordinances. Please note that the pond, its surrounding area, and several units within this community, including your current rental unit, are owned by the same entity. Continued harassment of other tenants, guests, or animals on the property will be considered a lease violation. Thank you for your understanding. I printed it out, folded it neatly, and walked over. I knocked once, waited, and when no one answered, slid the letter under her door. I didn't hear from Karen that night. No more flyers, no more Facebook posts, no angry yelling across the lawn, just silence. The next morning, I opened my curtains to see Karen standing near the pond, hands on hips, watching the ducks as if they'd personally betrayed her. Sir Flapsallet gave her a cheerful quack. I almost clapped. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long while. I took my coffee out to the porch and sat there in full view of the pond. It was one of those crisp, quiet mornings where the dew still clung to the grass and everything smelled like fresh earth. And promise, the ducks were already awake, paddling in lazy circles and occasionally quacking at absolutely nothing, as they always did. Sir Flapsallet was in rare form, flapping his wings like he was preparing for some grand flight he had no real intention of taking. I sipped slowly, waiting. It didn't take long. The front door of Unit B creaked open, and there she was, Karen, wearing a visor, robe, and that same world's #1 neighbor mug like some kind of ironic trophy. But today, she wasn't marching over in anger. No, today she stood still on her porch, holding the mug with both hands, just watching the ducks in silence. I saw it in her face, the uncertainty, the calculations happening behind her eyes. She knew, somehow, either from the letter or a conversation with the property manager, she had finally figured out who I really was, and more importantly, what I really owned. After a long pause, she finally made her move. Down the steps, across the grass, slowly, like she was approaching a lion instead of a flock of ducks. Her voice, when it came, was hesitant. So, you really own the pond? I didn't look at her right away, just nodded. Yep. And the buildings? I turned to face her, taking a slow sip from my mug, including yours, that landed like a punch. She blinked, clearly trying to form some kind of response, but the usual fire wasn't there. She was stunned, caught off guard by the quiet simplicity of it all. Karen had spent the last 2 weeks treating me like some careless tenant, disrupting her peace, and now the balance of power had flipped completely. She stood awkwardly for a few more seconds before finally muttering, "I didn't know." I figured. The silence that followed was heavy. Not angry, just weighted with the reality of the situation. She'd spent so much time building up this narrative in her head about the nuisance neighbor with the ducks, completely unaware. She was essentially threatening her own landlord over a few harmless birds, Look, she started, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. I don't sleep well. The quacking caught me off guard. That's all. I nodded, keeping my voice even. I get it. Change can be noisy, but they're ducks on a pond, not a marching band. She cracked a weak smile at that. Fair point. There was another pause, longer this time. She stared at the pond for a while, watching Quackers dunk his head below the surface and come up shaking like a wet dog. They're kind of cute, she admitted, almost like it physically pained her to say the words out loud. They are, I said. My kids named them. That one's Detective Bill. She let out a short laugh. Detective Bill? Seriously, yep, solves all the great mysteries of the pond. Her laugh softened the whole interaction. The Karen I'd dealt with over the last 2 weeks, the Karen of complaints and threats and flyers, seemed to melt a bit under the morning sun. For the first time, she looked more like a tired woman trying to hold on to her little bubble of peace, not the villain of the neighborhood. Then, surprisingly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a napkin. Bread. I don't know if they're allowed to eat this, she said, almost sheepish, but I figured maybe I could make peace. I raised an eyebrow. No white bread. It bloats them. But they like peas and corn. She nodded, making a mental note like a student who had just been gently corrected by the teacher. Well, she said after a moment, I guess I owe you an apology. Apology accepted, I replied without hesitation. And thanks for not kicking me out. I smiled. Karen, I never wanted a war, just wanted my ducks, and maybe a quiet life. She gave me one last look, then turned and started back to her unit. But halfway there, she stopped, glanced back, and asked, do they like lettuce? They love it. And with that, she disappeared into her house. A new day, a new understanding. Over the next week, things changed in small but meaningful ways. Karen didn't post in the Facebook group anymore. The flyers stopped. And then, one afternoon, I saw her kneeling by the pond tossing chopped lettuce into the water while chatting softly to Sir Flaps a lot. The first time she waved at me across the lawn, I almost spit out my drink, but I waved back. A few days later, she brought out a small plastic chair and set it up near the edge of the pond. Not every day, but often enough that the ducks started waddling over to greet her. She didn't talk much at first, just sat and watched, but soon enough, she was narrating their antics to herself like a nature documentary. There goes Quackers again, chasing his own tail, no coordination. That one. It became a routine. I'd see her out there, sometimes even with a bag of peas, sitting like a content old aunt at a duck reunion. It was honestly kind of heartwarming. Words spread around the neighborhood, too. People stopped by to see the ducks. Kids started naming them. One family brought over a floating toy for them to play with. Suddenly, the ducks weren't a nuisance anymore. They were the neighborhood's shared joy. And Karen? She went from duck nemesis to duck ambassador. She started referring to them as our pond crew and even corrected someone online when they suggested getting rid of them. I never brought up the complaints again. Didn't need to. She knew, and I knew she knew. Owning property comes with all kinds of responsibilities, maintenance, bills, weird tenants. But nothing quite prepares you for the quiet satisfaction of resolving a petty feud. With patience and ducks. Sometimes you don't need revenge. Just a pond, some noisy birds, and the knowledge that the loudest quacks aren't always coming from the water. And if anyone asks what happened with Karen, I just tell them this. She complained about my ducks once. Now she brings them peas.